on. All right, I'm just going to pull up the chat to see which one of us is gonna mess up first, technologically speaking.
I am holding my breath. My phone's on silent. We're doing this. It's okay.
Well, I can see all the levels, so I think
everything's charged.
Oh wait, I heard some of myself on one of these things, so it was me. This week it's me.
Yes.
All right. Well, anyway, ciao, Colin, ciao, Bambini. Welcome to episode 3 of Fortune's Fools. How was your week? What's going on?
Great. I am learning to cook at only the young age of 20. What did we decide?
20-something, 20s. Yeah. We're twins.
Getting into the zone. Turns out cooking is disgusting. It's messy, it's chaotic, and I'm thriving. That's all I can say. I actually posted a video on my Instagram, Colin Alexander Draws, and apologies in advance if you're following me. On there, a couple of you have reached out to say, please stop and please never do this again, and I will not stick to that promise. Thank you.
Yeah, well, the shaman diet, we were chatting about this before we went live.
Yeah.
So for my shamanic energy medicine certification, I'm not allowed to have grain or dairy, and those are the two main ingredients of pizza. So that's been a change, a good one.
It's a big sacrifice.
Yeah.
I would be dead in a week if it wasn't.
And unfortunately, it has actually worked. And not from weight loss is a different thing, but from an inflammation and dreams perspective, and all the stuff you kind of need for energy healing, it makes energy healing so much better. The same the booze thing I got. You can't drink and then do energy healing the next day. That's fine. And I'm like, God, cheese? Really? And then yes, it turns out cheese gets in the way of energy healing. So
don't fuck with cows, guys. Don't do it.
All right. So in the intervening week, we're going to talk about where you guys got for how long no grain or dairy, forever. If I'm going to, which I probably at the moment I think I will, at least a couple of days a week, move into doing this a couple of days a week. The energy healing thing, second half of the year, once I'm actually certified. Premium members know that I've got a free haircuts thing going at the moment where if you want me to test energy healing on you for free, that's great. I would love to do that. And apologies in advance if anything goes wrong. So far it hasn't. You got some merch show up.
Yes. A tote.
A tote.
I've never owned a tote in my life, and now that I've got this little number, hold on, I'll just flash it. Wait, what? Here it is.
I actually think
I've got a label on it, guys. I'm selling this on my own personal eBay for £100,000. It's really cute. And the quality of the actual canvas is I'm gonna have to use.
Well, you were just talking about now you're healthy Nigella type cooking and so on. You can take that.
Yeah, listen. This is going to be filled with aubergines before we know it, or eggplants. If you please.
We were talking before we hit record that I think we're doing merch right, which is ironically, because it is such a what's the word. A dreary inevitability of the 2021 online world, right? So it's well, how can we speak to that? And it's fanny packs. It's centering the fanny pack. Let's look at what this world is and can be. And I mean, the tote, obviously it's going to take longer for us to get here, but I'm going to use that going to the supermarket myself because it looks good. It's not even...
For me... Anything that I would consider buying as merch, it has to be something weird that I would point to in my flat and say, guys, look at this. How cool is this?
Yeah.
How weird is this? This is what you want in your life. I don't need functional practicality, seamless design. I need a statement piece
weird and odd. Yeah.
that tells you that I listen to a podcast.
Well, it's funny, not speaking of, but I can't really wear it anywhere now, but in 2018, I did buy a clickbait David Dobrik hoodie. And why I'm bringing that up is I got the size wrong, and this is fanny pack related, except I got the size wrong in the opposite direction. So, and I was significantly larger than too, but it still looks like a boyfriend shirt. It still looks like it's this giant thing and says clickbait on it that I can only wear around the house because it's like when the little rascals are in a coat and the bottom two run away. So it's just like, yeah. It was the wrong size. But
we're not ready for moo-moos just yet. I'm thinking of that from my 50s. Definitely, I'm going moo-moo central.
Exactly.
Homer Simpson style, 100%.
You got a prototype of the fanny pack, not the one that we actually sell,
Yes.
didn't you? Now, tell us something about the sizes, because I do feel people will buy this because it's amazing, but you learned something about the sizing of the fanny packs.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And if I just really, 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 really stretch that little nozzle to the extremes, it may, on a good day, for a medium small, it might fit me. But no, I would operate on a size up sort of. So unless you were Mariah or Japanese, don't go small medium.
Right.
We're all skinny legends here, but listen, the fantasy and the reality.
When people go to buy the fanny pack, think of the sort of people who unironically use fanny packs and use their waist measurements. so
I'll go extra large next time.
Yeah, right. Okay. So that's for people who are going to buy it, which I know people will because it's too cool not to. Go up a size, and if it shows up and it doesn't fit, I have no idea what Printful's return policy is, but also don't think, oh my god, back to the gym necessarily. It might be the case you need to go back to the gym, but the fanny packs run small.
Sample size, guys. It's sample size.
Nice one. So I want to talk about the clover now. So last week's card and the adventures you had. So I'm going to do, you can see the screen, I'm going to do a little bit of a screen change. And I'll bring the chat back up so I can follow along with people and talk about Clover and the journey you went on for this card.
Yeah, so this was, I threw up a couple of composition ideas. I think this is one of those cards that is fairly straightforward, and the idea is more or less formed straight out the bat. And it was a lapel. You suggested a lapel and a pen, and I just kind of. I was working on different, like a zoom in, a zoom out of this, and eventually we did like a close up of like the lapel, and I did my usual thing of like existing in a fantasy world where these are outfits that people wear, and it's like you said, it's the Hunger Games. Like we're doing just a full Tim Burton production, on a Colin Alexander budget. But I had a lot of fun. Doing all that side work, like the side quests, if you will, that adds a volume for me personally going on. It keeps me engaged with it in a way that I think I would hope as we sort of roll out kind of cards and the finished versions, I hope that kind of speaks in the card when you look at it. It's we're thinking in terms of, like I said to someone in the chat earlier, like I tend to think in triptych, so it's like da 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 da, and not necessarily that you need these all to make sense in a narrative, but they need to kind of exist, and I need them to look like there is a kind of universe at play. Yeah,
exactly.
To kind of sink into.
Yes, and because Jason's got a point. This is one of the things. It's been really good actually to have the chat going on in the Telegram group during the week. But what has happened, because we're on whatever it is, well, this is card 2, but we're on card 3. What tends to happen, and it's really interesting because the same thing happens in like corporate brainstorming. People suggest things, and we ask for this because it's like no data are irrelevant, but people overcomplicate it. So it's like, can we put like, what about in the background? Can we have it on a coat, on a chair? And I'm like, bitch, it's a playing card. Like it's a playing card and it's Lenormand. Like it needs...
It's so tidy. And this was something that I'm like, going in, but really you don't start to sweat about it until you start designing.
No, it really reminds me of it really reminds me of filmmaking, because again, you just leave, like, learning this at university and so on. you leave so much on the cutting room floor. So we spoke about how this guy is probably on a riverboat casino in this universe and all the rest of it. And that is not, we'll know it. The people who've come on this journey and will know it. And that energy is in the card, but it can't be on the card. And for instance, like the sort of the black and white treatment at the end, I think is too busy. I think that cravat needs to go back to closer to what it is in the middle, because it's actually swamping.
I am not kidding you. That was like as I sent it to you, and I was like looked at it, I was like, that bitch needs to get out of here. That is busying up the situation, like to 100%.
Yeah. So like the middle one is actually the best, like that I think. And Jason has a point which is useful. Coming back to what did we talk about 3 and 4 leaf clover? We didn't, but I did in my head. And the reason we went with 3 is that it's actually a wider meaning of clover. So a 4 leaf clover means one thing. A 4 leaf clover means 4 leaf clover. But clover in a 3 means the message of the plant. It allows it to be all the other kind of things that clover can point to in a reading: marijuana, plant medicine, eating more greens, and so on. So it's funny, like the 3-leaf clover also points at the luck talisman aspect, but it allows it the flexibility to be what it needs to be in a deck that's going to be used by fortune tellers. So Jason, great question. We did not bring it up, except in my dumb head, where a lot of takes happen in there, and we probably should have discussed it in the Telegram group. But there was method to the madness in terms of the question.
Yeah, I believe I picked that up psychically from you and just went 3-leaf clover because it seems more just in terms of it's such a widespread icon. The 4-leaf clover is such a it's St. Patrick's Day, it's a shamrock shake, it's
all that too,
it means a thing, but it's too loaded.
I don't want it to be I don't want it to be a pub at Gatwick. And
a green pain.
Yeah. I don't want, and it can be that, and that's. I mean, if we have Irish people on the show, I'm sure actually you'd agree with me. It's not like a shade on the Irish as much as I'm sure you're quite sick of seeing 4-leaf clovers in airport pubs. For those of us who can use airports, which is not me, or you, in fact, Colin.
No, indeed. Planning that trip in 2024, guys. I'm going to see Cambodia yet. That's going to be my thing.
All right. So anything else we want to say about this before we look at some of the tone suggestion you sent through as well?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I want to talk about. The process was, so I had a scanner come in that did not pair with my iPad Pro, which off of the public chat, this is my favorite. My weekly gripe is, why did I buy an iPad Pro? Why did I do it? Turns out, no good fucking reason. Excellent marketing. Terrible investment. Great for drawing digitally, but there you go. So the process, I think, going forward is going to be that I draw an ink, and then I will render it on my iPad digitally, because doing it by hand, I get a kind of sense of the size, and I get a sense of the kind of what's going to play as you shrink it down. And rendering it digitally, it just means I can be a little smoother in the rendering and a bit more fancy. And as we're about to talk about, with maybe elements that play with like popping out colors and playing with this kind of thing.
So
yes.
So this is the one, the sort of figurehead or masthead of a ship. That like this is the process you're talking about. This started in the real world with like pens and pencils, and then scanned in. Is that because you were going to have your own like what are we talking about? It was sort of like forging currency Easter weekend, working out how to get things to on and off your printing system.
It's a real process, put it that way. This is James Jean, my art dad, who is, I think, probably anyone my age, 27. This person, and if you had an eye on comics in the 2000s, this was the person that this was the level that you were trying to get to. Never to succeed, but you can't all be James Jean. So the process here is, it's all done traditionally. He, I believe, does it on Bristol board, and it's pen and pencil and white chalk. Scans it, and then you add the digital elements, a wash, so we can play with like different color combinations. We were talking about that, about it not necessarily just being black and white, doing like this, like if a color calls for blue, if it calls for yellow, if it calls for something, we can kind of toy with that, see how it plays. It gives you more optionality, I think, just to mix media in that sense. And also, this is a mixed media project, if you think about it. So it kind of feels more natural, and it expedites the process, because Jesus Christ, if I have to send another printer back or another scanner back or another goddamn iPad back,
yeah,
I'm going to have an aneurysm. That'll be the end of this.
So I think, ours is going to look more inspired. Like ours is going to look rougher. This is from a smoother universe, right? Ours has much more of that kind of like Marseille rough DNA. There's woodcut and comics in the land, but I get what you mean. This is sort of tonal plus color, right?
This might be an occasion where the sketch style that I tend to prefer might show up more in the final product. So usually it's very rudimentary sketches, and then it works into something, and then it works into the final thing. So this might go rudimentary, a bit more complex, and then boil it back down to like the sketch element. Yeah. So again, this is I think by next week we're going to see some interesting things. And
no, definitely.
That is a teaser, guys. That's
we do,
teaser,
and
everyone.
the teaser is, of course, the intro video and the Kraken and all the rest of it, right? So we know that we know where we're going to get to in terms of it. When I say rough, I don't mean like the morning after rough. I mean like, I mean it has to have the DNA of fortune telling with, and for centuries that was like woodblock playing card type stuff, and we just need to nod to that. But yeah. Anything else before we move into the ship?
I think that's a wrap on the Clover until next week. Well, again, teaser. I'm not going to tease. That's like I'm basically Samuel L. Jackson at the end of a Marvel movie right now. Like, do you want to build a team? So guys, just hang on to your seats, okay?
Well, now we're at like one of my favorite cards, unsurprisingly. Yes. And I do have like, because it's funny, the first one is the twink, the next one is the hookup. And I'm like, the ship kind of isn't in that world. And then I remembered I have a book called Sodomy and the Pirate Tradition, which I heard about from Stephen Fry, which is, as you expect, literally about like, a lot of people who went into piracy did it because gay didn't exist in the 18th century in that way, but a lot of people went into piracy to be butt pirates, to live amongst other butt pirates. And there's this whole
sodomy is all about opportunism, and that's what I've learned in my life.
And anyway, I was going to show you the book to prove that it exists, but I can't find it amongst my shelves. And I looked beside the toilet and beside the bed.
If you just really fabricated that, like, it was Stephen Fry recommended.
What an elaborate lie.
Butt pirates.
But yeah, we're about the ship, and we're going to look at some of the things we've added to the pinboard. The ship is one of the best cards, I think, in... it is. It's one of the best cards in Lenormand. And people are kind of familiar with the phrase, "my ship has come in." And that is from the kind of arrival of, or the emergence of the Dutch East India Company in the first stock markets in Amsterdam, because we think of it as, my ship has come in, or I'm waiting for my ship to come in. That's when you come into money. That's literally what happened, right? So we have stock markets today because private bourgeois people in the Low Countries and in Amsterdam would give money to someone to basically build or finance ships who would go to the Dutch East Indies and come back with immensely valuable spices. And obviously that was a fraught and dangerous journey. And if they showed up, you were in it. So the ship has to carry that, right? Because there's a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm just going to move to the screen share now. Roll that down. There's a few here. So let me just bring the chat back up. What we have going on here is sort of a couple of choices. And for people who are in the... I know Jason was talking before about, like, do you want a pirate ship? And I'm like, obviously I want a fucking pirate ship. But a couple of ways we can go at that. And that is that any ship is a pirate ship if pirates commandeer it. And that's indeed what happened. I don't know if people have watched the solid 3 out of 5 reenactment documentary series about pirates on Netflix at the moment. You kind of get the sense, one of the things that it is good at is demonstrating that the pirate fleets would expand and contract based on the kind of ships that they actually pirated, like getting really large slaving vessels and like, well, this one's sweet. It's got loads of cannons and shit. So, and also you just freed a bunch of slaves. Some of them become crew. So piracy could expand and contract based on the things that it actually encountered. And unfortunately, that's not quite the energy of the card. The energy of the card here needs to be closer to, hang on, I want to start with the Batavia style ones. So Amsterdam. This is a bit annoying. Let me see if I can't zoom that motherfucker. Oh, I hate Pinterest with the white hot passion of 1,000 suns. Like, it is just fucking dreadful. But anyway, yeah, so no way I can zoom that in on the secondary browser, but that's like Amsterdam. And you see the boats that are in front of it? This is from the world of my ships have come in, right? And these are all private vessels that have gone to like the crazy fucking corners of the world as far as Europe is concerned and come back with, oh, there it goes. All right.
Yeah, Pinterest is the app designed for your mom who wants to show you something on her phone.
I remember when it started. This was back in like actual. Okay, I'm just going to change. I hate this so much. I remember when it started, and it was back. I literally can't get to Colin saved to the fool's errand. When it started, and they had people who were still blogging back when people blogged, saying, "Oh, you'll be using this for blogging before you know it." And I'm like, "Will I fuck? This is the worst fucking like. Oh, I can't believe it still exists." Anyway. So we got a couple of options in terms of the ship. And the first one is, and again, open that up. That's better. I'm going to go back to screen share now. This is a replica of the Batavia. And this is kind of like from that early age of mercantile expansion. How European empires went, and people don't realize this, is they started off private and then became government policies. So there's a bit of a mix there, but in theory, so the Dutch holdings, the early empires of Portugal and the Low Countries, so Holland and so on, were private. The kings didn't necessarily care. And to the point that when the Dutch were heading down the coast of Africa, around the Horn, and kind of hugging the coast and going back along, sort of hugging the coast, India, and around into the so-called East Indies, they encountered Australia a couple of times, and they're like, we'll leave this for one of the great powers. We'll leave this for like France or England or something, because basically we're just here to make coin. Like the smaller kingdoms aren't interested in that sort of territorial holdings. So the story of the ship carries all of that. It actually carries like the adventure of far, far fucking distant worlds, and also that it's a commercial. So it carries the romance and adventure of travel, and also the windfalls that can come with it. And the wind thing, so this is the Batavia. This is kind of like ship as ships. Let me just go back to the board and see if I can get another one. God, what a ghastly... So we have two options, and I don't know, and I want people's feedback on it. I'll give you another Batavia. I'm leaning towards what is called like a T. This is literally woodcuts of the Batavia, which is this is the small image, so we'll see what happens. That's a ship. The Batavia is one of the most famous nautical disasters ever, again, off the northwest coast of Australia. I did a blog post about it, not a blog post, a solo show about it maybe 2 years ago, but it's technically Australia's first European colony was a bunch of pirating mutineers who turned into cannibals. And that's all as a result of this shipwreck. It didn't last, organizations like that generally don't. But these kind of big, slow-moving ships had hulls filled with very valuable things. So I got two options. The thing is, that one's slow. What we have that's a bit more adventurous is the Clipper, and the Tea Clipper in particular. So I'm just gonna. Where's a good? I'll start with this. The Clipper is a mid-19th century British design originally. And as it's called a tea clipper because it moved really fast and carried tea with it. It was much lighter, so it would carry light, valuable cargo. So mail, people, and tea, that kind of stuff. Some spices, but spices typically you went in bulk. So you'd have holes filled with cinnamon and whatever. But tea, especially in the mid-19th century, very valuable. And these boats went everywhere. They were sort of, prior to the Old Red Line, the great promise of like a connected empire. So you could get from Portsmouth to California in 100 days. And people would sell, so for the gold rush, people went out in clippers. And that was like amazing. That was like the Concorde of the day, right? So the story of wealth, but also the story of speed and adventure is, I would argue, in the Clipper, for us anyway, is in the Clipper rather than more of the Dutch East Indie card. But what do you think to that, Colin? What are your initial thoughts? I'm just going to start bringing up other images.
I like the... Oh, I can hear... Wait, hold on. Is that me again? Is it my phone?
That's all good.
No.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, cool. I like the tea clipper because as a good expedient model for what the ship card should represent.
Yeah.
It's not as piratey, obviously.
No, but,
that is your fetish.
That is frustrating, but we may yet find pirates elsewhere in the deck.
Yeah.
There are ways we can pirate it up, right? So I have a picture. The one that I'm sharing now is actually, this is Hobart in the this is Hobart in the 1880s, I think. And we actually have this hanging in our house, which is why it's sort of at a weird angle, because it's on an east-facing wall. And I was trying to take a photo of it with my phone this morning, and all the reflections are on it and so on. But heyday is exactly right. So in the background of this image, you can see Kununyi, which the whites call Mount Wellington, and you have Hobart kind of hugging the banks of the Derwent River there, and then all these fucking boats. And this is because empires are built on stolen fucking goods and spoiled and so on. That sort of wealth and connection to the world is in here. So these boats would go up and down the coast of Tasmania, moving people and logs and so on. But from here, they would also go straight back to the mother country. So heyday is exactly right, and ships come in. And yes. I like the energy of this card. Now, this one's or this image. This is obviously because otherwise I wouldn't have bought it. But this is too busy. However, coming back to the piratey options, here is a card where we may wish to experiment with more of a background. So like, do we want Port Royal in the background? Do we want something like Hobart or Sydney? Or like, if we're going to stick with the mid 1800s, it's more like, if we did 1700s, Port Royal's a good choice. But do we want, and the one I'm settling on, and I haven't actually looked for any images of this, that's a Colin job, is like, what did Mumbai look like in 1850?
Oh, nice.
Right? So add tea clippers and India, and you have the, at least my complex relationship with wealth and empire and speed and adventure and all that. Because as with the danger we have in the previous two cards, like who is this potential barman wizard type with the clover in his lapel, and what even am gender looking at that, like, is this person dropping me a letter? Is she gonna rob me? Like, there's the cards need to have a bite and a complexity, and the ship already has it. I'll tell you for why. Let me just pull up while I'm talking the next one, because we had East India Dock. If you look at the inset for the ship, it is the 10 of spades. This is East India Dock in London and so that's all clippers, right? So this is kind of like the other end of my picture hanging in the wall of Hobart. The 10 of spades is obviously a disastrous card. But remember the first episode we spoke about how spades in earlier European suits were good cards because they were like emblems or coats of arms. So a 10 of spades is literally my ship has come in, right? So it's maximum kind of like wealth and status in that 1600s, early 1700s, even a bit earlier. So we'll just say 1600s. Dutch East India situation of like, I have become a cinnamon baron and I can retire. I can have this beautiful townhouse in Amsterdam and have a house out in the hills somewhere. They don't have hills, but you know what I mean. Now, it's funny as the meanings have drifted over the centuries and we now have the 10 of spades. Here's a kind of like, I want the inset energy to be in the ship because the ship is itself fraught. So 10 of spades is also a disaster. So it is the sinking of the Batavia. And it is also like, we're not going to do a slave ship, right? But it is also like, this process is not clean. Wealth arriving on ships is not necessarily a clean process. Exactly. So I think the Clipper is the right vehicle for our universe that we were actually talking about with Jason in particular in the chat, in the Telegram before we started. So I think the Clipper is right, although if it turns out not to be, I'm not married to it. Something that looks like the Batavia, the old Dutch East India ones, is fine as well. But in terms of location, I also think like, so if it's Mumbai or would have been Bombay then, or something like that. And it doesn't, and it's one of those things that I think maybe only we need to know anyway, because sort of like the Hobart card, no one but me knows that's Hobart, and it's on a playing card. We'll know, and it'll be in the energy or the field of the card itself. But maybe it's Port Royal, maybe it's Mumbai, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, these things kind of have a funny way of kind of seeping out and the making of it. So it could just be like the way the light is in the image that suggests that it's Mumbai or something, or that it's Hobart. Like there's a light quality like all around the world, everything changes. So that could be something that, well, it might not be a detail heavy image. There's elements that you can get the story out and kind of hint at the kind of, I don't want to say exotic because that's a kind of gross word, but you know, like
no, but say romantic.
This isn't the Glasgow docks that we're dealing with here.
No, exactly.
Like,
so
it's
romantic is better, and that's when we get to the song. What you just said there is how I'm going to justify my ridiculous song choice. But before we get to it,
it's not going to be more ridiculous than that.
We'll see. Jason's talking about there's. In the chat, people are talking about whether this is a fast or a slow card. The thing about Lenormand is that's modified. So we don't associate ships with speed. And that's true. So when it's a card of journeying or distances, it is a journey in an older context of it taking a while to get there. It's not the Concorde. Yeah. But remember that my ship has come in is surprise wealth, and not like the clover where it's like, I found 50 quid in the street. Best believe I'm going to just drink that away right now, like for the fuck of it, right? The ship appears on the horizon and you're like, is that my fucking boat? And gets closer and closer and so on. So
there's an expectation of the fortune and the wealth.
But you're unclear when it's going to land, right? So the ship has, and that's really important in the card, it has distances and romance rather than exoticism, and it has wealth associated with it that is fraught. And it might not be fast, but and in fact it definitely isn't, but it's surprise wealth. So it's sort of like, actually someone mentioned this on the Ansible, that they kind of forgot that they bought a whole bunch of Bitcoin in like, Q3 of last year, and it's 5x'd since then. So is that right? 4x'd since then. They're like, oh shit. That's kind of like double clover. But in terms of the speed of the card, I want to come back to this. The card itself is slow, but the language of Lenormand allows for it to be moderated, because you never pull a single card. So if you get it near the letter, yes, there will be delays in communication with someone international, right? But if you get it near the rider, no. So that's like either rapid movement somewhere or rapid communication. The language of Lenormand is relational. So ships themselves might be slow, but we leave it up to that bitch herself as to whether it's fast or slow and so on. So it's a relational language. It's really, really interesting going card by card, because it's sort of not antithetical, but it's not how one lives the Lenormand, right? But it's real good.
No, yeah.
Jason says they like Hobart implicating Gordon in the deck as our captain feels right. I love that. But also, Hobart has Kunani in the background, right? So Mumbai, because it's like river ports are boring from a playing card picture perspective. So either we do a closer, and it didn't really work like this. It's not that they loaded tea up the Ganges near some temple. Like you can't, that tips it into exoticism and cheapness. But yeah, we'll do a Hobart treatment and see, because I agree. I think, especially as in a way, like Marie-Louise Girardin is our rider, it might be kind of fun to wink back specifically.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you,
well, this is the trip that moves. The story seems to move. Just we know what the next week's card is, and it does seem to move, and like the story of the deck seems to move in like little sections. So that says like these first three are like this speaks to the fortune hunter and all that kind of stuff, and then it becomes more settled, and then it becomes more fraught. Things develop. So yeah, definitely. I think a nod back and a nod forward would be cool to like try and incorporate into it.
Yeah, and it may turn out to be shit. It may be that you can't draw. You can't draw Kunani for shit, and it's like, okay, well, that's not how it's meant to be.
Listen, of all the things I will not be able to draw, we've done horses, we're doing boats, like
a sacred Tasmanian, a sacred Tasmanian mountain being. Yeah, fair enough. That's allowed. But the Tasmanian, it's weird, right? So, that whole story of Marie-Louise and Bruni Dontecasto and so on. Only I'm interested in this stuff because I am, in a former life, a literal salty sea dog. But Australia was discovered by European powers, put on European maps in this really ad hoc way. Because what I was saying before about when the Portuguese were the first ones to do expanding into the Orient in search of spices, right? And that's kind of how they ended up beating Venice. Venice had the overland routes, and then Portugal used ships that they basically got from the Templars, long story, and went around the Horn of Africa, up the coast in between Africa and Madagascar, and across. So essentially hugging the coast. Bit weirder than that, in fact, because they'd have to kind of take the corner, which is the Horn. Strangely, you'd have to get almost halfway out into the Atlantic so you could hook back around and use the roaring 40s to get you past it safely. So the journey was a year, 9 months, 10 months to get from the mouth of the Med all the way around to kind of like east coast of India and into the Spice Islands. And then the Dutch, a century or so later, were not necessarily blown off course, but investigating and found the Roaring Forties. Now, the Roaring Forties are like winds that blow at 40-degree latitude, hence the name. And it's kind of like getting on a moving walkway, and a moving walkway going at like 40 miles an hour. So you get your boat into the Roaring Forties, and it just takes off. And it takes off underneath Australia, until it smash hits like the west coast of Tasmania. So on their way to it, you shaved half the time to get to the Spice Islands by essentially going further down into these really dangerous waters. Dangerous in the sense of your boat, you're overclocking your boat at this point. Like it's just hooking along. And so they found Australia in weird ways. So they hit like the west coast of Australia, so West Australia and so on, and went up that way. And then they went the whole way underneath going, well, let's see what happens here. And they hit Tasmania. So that's why it was originally called Van Diemen's Land, because it was found by the Dutch. And it was found by the Dutch on this ocean-based moving walkway. And in fact, the fastest way back to Europe was to take that all the way across the Pacific and back up underneath, like from South America and up. So there's this incredible moving walkway that is contained in the story of the ship, and My Ship Has Come In, that in fact includes Tasmania. So, and almost like accidentally, because it was not, they weren't necessarily looking for it. It was on their moving walkway as they were trying to get to the Spice Islands. So this is my roundabout way of saying, you know, we can put hope out on the table for this.
It's not off the table. That's what you can say. Certainly. I'll do like a couple of compositions and think about things like Mumbai and Hobart, and see how we can kind of include it all.
If at all.
Yeah, make it sense. Yeah. If at all.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it makes more. I mean, again, we've seen just a ship like sort of veering off into the horizon and stuff. So it's a more world building way to think about it for me, which is what I enjoy. So if it gives me something to do this week, then I am all for it.
Nice one. Anything else? There's some really good chat. Magic the Gathering comes to mind, and some also not good chat there, Nate. Anything else we want to talk about with regards to the ship itself?
Like, I can do different like sketches of different like models of ship. This feels like it's your card, so it's your call. Start with the clipper. If we can make it work, I'm happy to make it work like this. I'm easy on this because this reeks of Gordon, so we can give it our all.
My stank is everywhere. My salty stank. So start with the clipper, and it'll be more about a ruling in and out. Do you know what I mean? So the thing about ports is that they're boats at rest, and I like the energy of the sketch that we have hanging in the house here. It's boats at rest, but it has that exoticism and movement, and not necessarily movement, but distance. And so I like that about the ship, but it may well be that for us to contain the majority of its message, it needs to be moving. So like, it's a lot to ask to put on a playing card. I want to clip a ship, and I want it leaving port, and I want that port to be Mumbai in 1855. It's a lot, but
I've had worse requests. So don't worry about it.
But that's the sort of direction we start with. But obviously, the most important part, let's not get hung up on the background of it. The most important part is to find the ship, and I think it is I think it's moving, but it may not necessarily, it might be wrong. It may not necessarily be going at a tremendous clip, which is of course where we get clipper from. Nautical term for you.
Guilty. I'm having like a literal flashback to one of the best / worst movies of all time, which was Speed 2, Cruise Control, where it's the boat just like ramming into like port. We're not going to do that, but that's just literally all of this kind of in one image, that Sandy B sort of doing her best with what she has, which might be where we end up with it.
There's some last minute stuff in the chat is annoyingly good, and I haven't thought about it. So Jason's got obviously the spiritual journey connection. Anything we can give that to the design to add to that ghost tinge. And Elizabeth saying, I like it on a star at sea, so it looks like it's floating through space. Now, the long list of boats that we had, then we got it down to like the Batavia and a T-Clipper, included the junk from the third Pirates of the Caribbean film, right? So like a triple-masted junk, which they used to basically travel to the spirit world. And that's not quite right, because the junk doesn't signify, they were typically more fishing vessels, so they don't map to our same understanding of My Ship Has Come In. But what I did like about that scene is that it is about the combination. The night sky and the ocean are psycho-mythically the same thing. Now, again, we're in a playing card situation. So can we do reflections of stars on a wine dark sea? Maybe.
Yeah. I remember when we were doing the branding for like the illustration again for Fortune's Fools. We did talk about this, and we talked like I came in with like Fata Morgana, which is like the illusion of like a horizon and all that kind of stuff, and you suggested this, and then that caught, like I remember your blog about our rewatch of the Pirates movies, and so I went and watched like the first 3, which by the way, a lot better than I remember. I think as a child, as a teen, very bored by the Pirates movies, watching them as a teenager. Rewatching them.
Well, this project is cancelled.
Had a gale time, but yeah, like I enjoyed the just the cinematography of like the flip of the
stunning
the night sky. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Definitely something that we can imbue into this, because it's not quite, but it's enough to kind of consider.
Yeah, I think even if a ship's departing and it's evidently evening, they typically wouldn't. They would typically arrive of an evening, so that's the challenge. If we want it to be evening, it's got to be in the open sea. And I'm not ruling it out, because I absolutely get why people are bringing that up. The trouble is you don't want. There's so many I apparently use so many nautical metaphors that I'm struggling. You don't want to like swamp the bilges with secondary meanings. So if we actually just have it as like, because they're talking about Erendel and what have you in the chat, if we make it a beautiful boat under a starlit sky, then it only has the spiritual meaning, and it needs to be about bank as well. Needs to be about them Benjamins. So nod to it, I think, is the right way. Because otherwise we're too far off course, and we'll be bailing.
As it all were.
Yeah. But I do like the idea of it. I think somewhere in there, if we can add a nod to what the ship is rather than what the ship needs. Again, going back to the pirates.
Yeah. I think with the rendering style, which we'll have more to show next week, there's a lot of opportunity to kind of get like to pack in without busying up. It's doable. We'll work it out.
Okay, two really, like, this keeps going. So Fred's got maybe a tail vanishing into the water that could be a whale or a mermaid. Put that in the maybe pile, because that is not bad. And Jason's got, what if the star is part of the ship design? And I think the only clip is still in use. Used to be called the Star of India. So I think there is officially, it's somewhere like Canada, somewhere. They end up in strange places. Not that Canada's strange, but for a boat called Star of India for the 19th century, maybe it is. So there is a famous clipper called the Star of India. So, and it didn't have like a star on its sail necessarily, but ours could. So that's not a bad idea as well.
It's something to think about.
As you said, like, this is my card, but also this is a card that I think we'll be working on for more than a week.
It's a big one. There's little cards and there's big cards in the deck. There's things that like the clover, fairly simple. You know what you are getting going in, but this one it has personal meaning, and then it also has a meaning in the deck, and then there's dimensions. It's got dimensions on it. There's dimensions on the deck. The poop deck.
Well, I think that's an important point, which is this one. Like, for me, and obviously that's the case because if you can see in the background here, boats and that stuff is like my primary motif. But I also think it's in the Lenormand. I think that's one of the cards I certainly do, unsurprisingly, think of first, is the ship. I mean, maybe there's some psychopaths out there who think mice or like Lily first, or like, but ordinarily I think people think of the big dramatic ones, and the ship. There's always a card you want to get in a reading. For me, it's the twink. But other than that, it's the ship.
It's the Raider, it's the twink. It's the first three cards, to be honest.
Pretty much. That's a great evening.
Definitely, even just like going back to like Madame Lenormand herself. This would have been like a ship would have been a ship would have been the way she operated and the way she did her business internationally. Like even going back to like the relation with Scotland, like she was relying on ships. Her ships, she was waiting for her ships to come in the whole way through her life, or the whole way through like her professional life. So definitely, it's one of those cards that has like an extra dimension every time you kind of go in and think about it. Fabulous.
All right, what's your song?
Oh, okay. So mine's I love a literal song. So I went Nicki Minaj, Starships, because I had a backup, but it didn't quite float my. Oh my god, it didn't quite float my boat. I can't believe it.
It's brilliant.
It was Enya or Orinoco Flow, but the
fuck you. That's literally the one I picked.
Yes.
And I told you I was going to defend it.
Too.
Yeah, like I went straight to Starships, as you do, because Nikki is my queen.
Because who else? I mean,
but,
Pirate Queen Nicki Minaj.
But Starships is, and I might circle back to it. I'm not ruling it out. Like if our garden card is in the evening and somewhere like Cartagena, then that's Starships, because it's actually about a party, right? Like it's actually about having fucking fun. So I had to break my heart, not choose Nikki, and I had to pick something that's gay in the schoolyard sense of it being a pejorative rather than actually gay, which is Orinoco Flow.
Orinoco Flow. And I was like, this is going to be too gay. This is going to be too. So I went with Nicki Minaj. Like that's what we're dealing. It's Nicki Minaj or it's Enya. That is perfect.
So Orinoco Flow has the 19th century romanticism of far-flung poets. Yeah. So and that's in the car. That's why that's how I defend. I said that earlier in the episode. I'm like, I will defend you when you said exotic and I said romantic. I don't like the song. I don't like Enya. But that's
harsh. That's Anastasia all over again. Like we're going to be at odds here.
But it has that different ports exoticism of thing that's in there in our card, in our universe anyway. So not that
the closest I got was that fucking sea shanty that went viral over like, what are we, the summer, the winter, and I couldn't face it. I couldn't face a sea shanty other than maybe that one from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, well, I went that.
Didn't really apply.
So I went Starships, and then I went Pirate's Life for Me, and then I went and like, can I? It's too early in the project to be like, can we do show tunes or theme songs? Because I'm like, actually, the theme music, Captain Jack's theme music's pretty good, but the energy's it's too fast. And then I'm like, oh, God fucking damn it, it's going to have to be Enya. People are roasting me in the chat about not liking Enya. There's a backstory to that. I actually nothing Enya. I nothing her. I don't dislike or dislike. But my good friend Jay adores her and thinks that she's the natural successor to Bowie, like jail for you.
So what?
No, he has this whole thing about like she invents her own languages and looks and all this. And I'm like, yeah, but it's all the same. It's all like, oh, I live in a castle near Bono and I wear green.
That's the shit. Like, that's the shit that makes her interesting. That she lives in the castle with her cats.
Exactly.
And her two songs are good, and then that's kind of where we end the story. Bowie, that's a crazy jump. That's mental. That is a leap.
It is. Well, so that happened. That was the last night before. Speaking of the ship and departures, we had this conversation at my Airbnb. It was me, Jay, Scarlet Imprint, and Katie, my jungle wife, at my Airbnb. So after the occult conference, and Jay, well, I brought it up because he mentioned it one of the times we'd been drinking, and I kind of shot myself in the foot because obviously the Scarlets are like, are you fucking serious? Like Enya is, now that Bowie's dead, Enya's like the natural successor, and so we teased him about it, and then I can defend this better. I had Nikki, of course, as the natural successor to Bowie. So I didn't do myself any favors in terms of winning that argument. But anyway, yeah. So for Elizabeth in the chat, that's the backstory of why I joke about not liking Enya because it annoys Jay.
Isn't that funny that it has like it ended up being between Nicki Minaj and that revolts me in every level of my being. Here we are, the most, we're boiling down to the most basic gay of a certain age choices.
29.
generations of gay. Yeah, 27. What?
Alrighty. Well, yeah, this has been really good as ever. The chat, I think we're all getting better at this. Well, at least the people in the chat are. We're probably the same.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm kidding. Here's what I will say. So, just in terms of like production for me, if you have opinions or suggestions, the next like 2-3 days, that's really crucial. I don't need to hear it on Wednesday my time. It's already done.
Yeah.
So I want to hear everyone's take. Get in there fast. Let's have at it. But come like today and yesterday, really, it's kind of already in the bag. It's interesting to talk about still if you're kind of just dipping in and out. But
yeah,
if you want to really get like gears grinding, like that's like getting it tight, and we can do something fun.
Yeah, I think that's cool, and that's really interesting to hear because obviously it makes sense. The value is most value is at the beginning, and the secondary amount of value is at the very, very end when it's like make the clover a little bit bigger or the cravat is too busy.
Yeah.
Like, but that's
cool.
We
can shoot the shit. The shit the full way through.
But actually, like, you're right. The last couple of weeks have been, most of the chat has been the middle of the week when it's the least useful. Yeah.
It's like we're doing this, and then it's the way everyone obviously consumes like podcasts and all this kind of stuff. But if you want to get a tight crack in like the next 2 days, like give me your best or your worst. Like go for it, go nuts. Love to hear it.
Nice one. Well, this is always big fun, and I am doing my own stunts and audio and whatever. So I'm going to try and make sure we don't fuck up switching off our live stream. But thanks once again, Colin, and everyone. The Telegram chat, which is below this video, and you can find it on the Fortunes Fools website. And buy up incisors for your fanny pack.
Yeah, I will be doing that.